Hi guys, Nathan here. Today I want to talk about paranormal equipment, fake or real. So I want to start the video off by explaining why I'm doing this video. We get a lot of comments whenever we're using different devices such as Ouija boards, spirit boxes, pendulums, K2 meters, all the equipment more or less we use. We get comments questioning the authenticity of it, questioning the mechanics of it, the way it works, and it's something I want to address. Okay, I want to explain why we use what we use, how they could be used to be fake, how they could give false positives, and I want to explain the way in which we try to reduce that. Okay, there's a lot of different theories behind a lot of the equipment we use, so let's kick right into it and let's start with some of the older methods. So let's look at the Ouija board, the pendulum, and the dowsing rod, some sort of Victorian methods of ghost hunting. So this, as I'm sure anybody who's watched any of our videos has seen before, is our Ouija board. One of our prized possessions. On the back is a list of the locations it's been to. One day we might sell this, to be honest. Whoever buys this or has this will have the Ouija board that's been used at all these locations, with obviously the video record as well on our channel. So the Ouija board, great bit of equipment. We use it on most of our investigations where it's allowed. There's a lot of locations where they don't allow it, such as 30 East Drive. The Ouija board, it is believed, can open a doorway to the paranormal realm, and that people can come forth and move the planchette to give messages. There's a lot of rules to a Ouija board. I think Brian's actually made a video on the rules of the Ouija board, so you could check that out if you're interested to know more about it. That being said, with the Ouija board, there is something known as the ED motion effect, which is a subconscious effect, whereas if your finger is on the planchette of the Ouija board, you can actually move that planchette subconsciously without realizing it. You could swear blind that you weren't touching it, be absolutely adamant that you haven't moved your hand on purpose. But the brain is a very complex thing, and subconsciously you can actually move it. So the ED motion effect plays a massive part. It's something we try and rule out. There's other methods, so you can use stuff like blindfolds when you do a Ouija board. So the idea of that would rule out stuff like the subconscious, because if it comes up with a load of gobbledygook, could still be your subconscious trying to move it. If it comes up with words, you can't see that board, so you don't know what it's actually spelling. So it's got much more chance of being an actual spirit. You can't see that board, so you don't actually know what's being spelt. Anyone watching now, grab a pen, write some letters on a piece of paper, close your eyes, try and point to one of those letters or a sequence of those letters. You couldn't do it. So that's one of the ways we try and rule out the ED motion effect. The other way, sometimes we'll get messages come through on the Ouija board, and we will then go from those messages and do research. And on a couple of occasions, it's actually come up with the history of a location, something that's happened there that we didn't even know about, come through on the Ouija board. Sometimes we've had stuff come through that we did know about, so we've got to take it with a pinch of salt, whether that's our subconscious knowing that that's happened there or that's been witnessed there. Maybe our subconscious rolls with it. That's a couple of the ways we try and limit the ED motion effect. The ED motion effect also plays a part when using pendulum, for exactly the same reason. I can try and hold this as still as possible, but there is always a chance that my hands are moving. They're full of nerves and muscles. No one can be perfectly still. There is also a chance that subconsciously I'm moving it without realising. The one thing I will say with the pendulum that surprised me, I was very sceptical about pendulums when we first started. However, when this does go, and it doesn't always go, when it does go, I do often feel a tug. Rather than swaying, you feel a tug. Once again, whether that's a subconscious thing, there's obviously an experiment where if you're pushing against your one hand, then you move the other hand, your hand can go. It's that force measurement that can cause an issue. So whether subconsciously I'm feeling that and it's actually because my hand's trying to hold it still and then I'm moving, I don't know. Once again, we take the results with a pinch of salt. I think that's the best way too. And we try and correlate the evidence we get with it with other methods. I think that is the most important thing that will come from the whole of this video. We correlate all the evidence across the board. We'll never take just a Ouija board for gospel, or never take just a pendulum for gospel, or a spirit box or anything. It's only when the evidence correlates throughout an investigation you start to question the chances of it all being coincidental. The other piece of equipment which is vastly manipulated by the ED motion effect, or could be manipulated by the ED motion effect I should say, are these things, dowsing rods. Now, a lot of people use these to douse for water, so finding water sources. People use them in the paranormal. We try to use these in a slightly different way to what I've seen a lot of other teams use them in. So a lot of teams will hold them and say cross for yes, go straight for no, or separate for yes, or move this for yes or no. Don't like using yes or no questions with this because they're so sort of flimsy, that they're so light. They really are probably the easiest for your brain to manipulate with the emotion effect. What we will try and do with these is we'll try and use them to say, show us your grave, or show us where you lived, or show us this, in an area that we don't know. So at that point then we can turn around and say, oh okay, it's actually shown us this, or it's shown us that. We didn't know that. Is it correct? Is there anything in it? Or is it our brains playing tricks with us? Something else I'd like to point out, we've had a lot of people comment saying they're used for finding water under the ground, and that when we're using them it's actually just water sources we're finding, it's nothing to do with the paranormal. As there is no scientific evidence that the paranormal can manipulate these and that ghosts can manipulate them, there is also zero scientific evidence that water can be found with these. The only way water is found is, once again, through the emotion effect, your subconscious. So your subconscious will move these into an area where your brain suspects there's water, i.e. low level grounds or marshlands or whatever. So when people say they use these dowsers to find water, they're actually just using what's up here, and that's been scientifically proven. So once again, we try and limit how we use these. We try and get it to take us to somewhere specific. I try not to ask yes or no questions with it, because I don't think they're very accurate for that because of the ED motion effect. I think it's too easily manipulated. So yeah, that's some of our older equipment that can be manipulated by the ED motion effect. So now let's look at some of our more modern equipment that we use. So for example, the K2 meter. So these are our EMF meters. We use different types. These measure electromagnetic fields. So electromagnetic fields can be created by lots of electrical equipment, mobile phones, plug sockets. Most things on this planet will create an electromagnetic field. These detect them. These fields can be created constantly through telephone communications, wireless. So many different things can interfere with these fields. These are quite difficult to pinpoint, to the point you could go around a building, you could go around all the walls, like we have many times, and check things, and then later on in the night you get a spike and you think, wow, there's a ghost talking to me. It could literally be somebody in the house next door, over the road, making a phone call. So easily. Not saying it is, once again, we try and relate it with other evidence, but that is something that it physically can be. Something else I'd like to point out is we use REMPods. Absolutely fantastic, love them, really good. A REMPod works in the opposite way to a EMF meter. So this detects electromagnetic fields, and it will measure the level, the lights go off depending on the level. This creates an electromagnetic field. So it will create its own electromagnetic field, and then when it's interfered with, will go off. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be an object going into that field. So this could be set off with something as easy as a walkie-talkie. So as you can imagine, something we've made that mistake before on some of our very early investigations. We used walkie-talkies, heard the rempod going off, ran upstairs. 30 East Drive, for example, the first time we went there, ran upstairs thinking, wow, fantastic, the rempod's going off. Later on in the night, after using the walkie-talkies, we recognised there was a link, tested it. There you go, found out. For those out there, these can be set off using walkie-talkies or other pieces of equipment, once again including mobile phones. It's a real bugbear of mine, if I'm honest, is I know it's very, very common for people to go live at the moment on paranormal investigations. Go live, get people in, get interaction. Totally, I can understand why. It's something I've enjoyed doing in the past. I always wanted to set up a virtual investigations. People can sort of control what we do and bring people in, you know, people who can't get out and investigate, people who don't have the means or disabilities. I'd love to get them more involved with stuff like live investigations. The reason we didn't, and what stopped us, is I would feel a bit of a fool holding a K2 meter that can be interfered with by a mobile phone signal, or holding a rempod that could be interfered with a mobile phone signal 2 foot away from me and saying, oh, did you see that? The rempod's going off or the K2's going off, wow. And everyone online going, oh wow, yeah, there must be a ghost there. You're holding a mobile phone that is live. It's not even turned off, it's live, it's transmitting signals, Wi-Fi in some instances. Some people run it from the Wi-Fi. How could you ever say if that's genuine or not? You couldn't. And I think it almost hoaxes people a little bit. I think there's some people out there who are genuinely oblivious to the fact, and that's fair enough. We've learned as we've gone along. We don't claim to be the experts on everything. Our knowledge has come from research and experiences. We're not sitting here professing to be any better. But I do also know there's some groups out there that do know what can set a K2 off, and we'll still go live and we'll still act like it's amazing. And I just think that's a bit wrong, to be honest. So hopefully anyone who watches this and watches those lives, maybe it'll open your eyes a little bit. Maybe you already know, I don't know, but to me, I just find that a little bit wrong. So that's some more of the equipment and how it can be set off. None have ever been proven scientifically to be able to identify ghosts, which is why we use them with a pinch of salt, which is why we correlate the evidence across the board and try and create a picture using all the bits of equipment as well as other things that we pick up throughout the night. It's never going to be K2's gone off, it must be a ghost. Rempod's gone off, must be a ghost. It just doesn't work like that. So yeah, that's some more of our equipment. Something else I want to talk about is spirit box. I have a personal issue with the spirit box. I don't like them. Now, Brian is a massive fan of them. I don't like them. It's something we disagree on. I'll use it because, once again, as with all the other evidence, we can correlate it and see if we get something that marries up with something else. It's a radio sweeper. It sweeps radio channels, and 9 times out of 10 you can tell it's radio channels. Once again, a mistake we made before we looked into the equipment further than we did. Oh, let's put it in reverse. If we put it in reverse and get it going really fast, it's got to be a ghost. No, it hasn't. You think of your old radios, for those who are as old as me, where you have the dial and you can turn it one way to search through the channels, or turn it back to search through the others. All you're doing is changing what direction you're searching in. You're not stopping. You'd still get a radio station searching backwards as well as you would going forward. So it doesn't change anything. AM, FM, you got both radios. It's not going to change anything. The speed in which it flows through. Once again, go back to the dial on your radios. You could spin it super fast. You're still going to hear blah, 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 and clips as it goes through. This is constantly doing that. That is all it's doing. Is what I used to do as a young kid, prattling around with my dad's old stereo, back and forth, thinking it was funny. That is literally what this does. That being said, we have had some very peculiar things. I'm actually going to mention East Drive again, twice in one video. A location I'm not a fan of, that's interesting. But yeah, we actually did, the first time we went to East Drive, we got Brian's name through this and had a few strange messages. Also Acton Bernal Castle in the graveyard, St Mary's graveyard. We will continue to use it. We'll continue to correlate it with other evidence. Am I a huge fan of it? No. once again, I'm sure a lot of you know this information and you're thinking, Nath, you're just telling us crap we already know, you're wasting our time. But if 1% or one person has learnt that through this video, hopefully it opens their eyes a little bit to what some of these channels are doing. I've actually seen channels with the older type spirit boxes which have got the turner. I don't really like to name names, but I remember when we first started out, there's a group called Proving Demons, which I think they should be called Proving Fakes. I think they've been proven to be rubbish so many times, it's just ridiculous. Bloody hiding stuff in walls and God knows what else. But anyway, I remember watching one of their lives once and the guy using the radio, and it was a spirit box with a dial, and he knew exactly where the station was. So he'd ask a question, and when he wanted an answer, he'd just flip it past that station, and you wouldn't quite make out what it said. It'd go, "Ugh," but it's as it's just trying to tune on that station, and he would do it in time to the question every single time. And people were going crazy with comments, but it was just rubbish, absolutely rubbish. So yeah, that's the spirit box. I also want to talk about other methods we use, for example, photography, paranormal photography, pareidolia. It's something a lot of people are aware of again, but we've took a lot of photos in the past. We've caught some great things, particularly at Dow's. I actually caught a fantastic picture at Glastonbury Abbey. For those taking photos and they don't know, or they haven't done an investigation before, they don't know the best way to do it, always double shot. So every photo we ever take in the paranormal, if I stand still and take a photo, I take two. It's bosh, bosh. And I try not to move in between, take them as fast as possible. Next photo, bosh, 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 bosh. The reason is, if there is a figure or something moving throughout that photo, you'll capture the movement between the two photos. Sometimes you'll capture something in the one photo and you think, that's weird, doesn't make sense. And you'll check the other photo and it might just show that it was somebody's shadow moving, or it was something and it's not present in the second photo. Pareidolia, as controversial as it can be, you can limit it. And the way in which we do that is we always double shot, always double shot. And that's how we try and rule out pareidolia for us. It's not foolproof, but it's the best way. The last thing I want to touch on is SLS cameras. But SLS cameras and apps. Apps, not a fan of at all. Once again, we've used them. They've come up with some interesting stuff. Unfortunately, it's a database. It's a database of words that cannot be affected by the outside environment, and 90% of them are regulated. We went on a ghost hunt recently at Warwick Castle. It was a group event. It's the only way we'd get the opportunity to go in the castle, and it's fantastic to see the castle. However, the event itself was shocking because of apps. The apps were all giving the same answers in different orders at the same time intervals per app. So I was timing one person, so Brian was timing the other, and it became quite laughable. And the last one, SLS. SLS is very interesting. I do like using it. However, as I'll show with this clip of the nunnery, you have to be careful because SLS is designed to pick up anything that looks like a figure. It's designed to try and recognise the human form. So it will try and do that in everything, whether it's a chair, whether it's a sink, for example, on the video, or other things in the past, particularly stuff like locations that have mannequins and stuff. It will try and do that. You can rule that, you can limit that, which is what we try and do as always, but that is exactly what it's designed to do. I hope this little video helped people. I hope it hasn't been too patronising for people either. I'm trying to make it for people of all levels, so I know there's a lot of people who look at this and think, oh, we know all this now, you know, but I just hope there's a few people that might have learned something from this, and potentially when they watch these lives or go on group investigations or things like this, can learn something and perhaps not be hoaxed, because the paranormal world is our lives. We think it's what we do, it's our passion. Don't really know what we do without it. However, there is that much fakery and issues going on in the paranormal world. It just becomes ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. The only other thing I want to touch on is debunkers. Take those with a pinch of salt as well. There's some out there that genuinely do it to stop people being hoaxed. Fantastic, not a problem with that, totally agree with it. However, there are also debunkers out there who I've seen run their own investigations and make exactly the same mistakes that they're pulling other people up for, which I think is wrong. And I think in some instances I've seen lately it can almost be bullying as well. I think there are fakers out there, but there's also a lot of people learning and making mistakes as they learn. And I think to pull them up and call them idiots or fakers, or I just think it's a little bit uncouth.